Hello, everyone, and happy Monday. So this is my first time doing a review. I was lucky enough that the folks over at Paizo sent me a few different documents to kind of go over and review, show off to my followers. And for today, the one that I want to focus on is probably one of my favorite ones that I have had the chance to read in a while here. This is the second edition Pathfinder Lost Omens setting Pathfinder Society Guide. Now, for those who don't know much about the actual Pathfinder Society, in the lore, they are a group of adventurers, explorers. They cooperate. They seek out hidden knowledges and forgotten things. And I am a huge, huge fan of them as a group in the Lost Omens setting, to the point where I have printed out here my own little glyph of the open road badge as the Pathfinder Society symbol. I love playing characters who are either striving to become society members or already are. In fact, one of the only cosplay type things I've ever done is my original character, Hayden Gaunt, who was a Pathfinder Society wizard back in the 1E days. So, just a few overall things. The setting of this book is beautifully laid out. It's organized, it's detailed, but it does not feel like there's any unnecessary fluff. Whatever you are looking for is easy to find with the glossary, and even if you're just using it either as a GM or as a player, there is plenty of content to kind of inspire new characters, new settings, homebrews, whatever you might be thinking of. So let's kind of jump right into the first chapter. This is kind of a general overview of the society. Really cool new backgrounds for aspiring Pathfinders. A lot of the backgrounds they've added for 2E characters are really cool, such as Archaeologist, Pathfinder Recruiter, Spellseeker, Trailblazer, and Translator. Now, this video would take forever if I went on every single thing, but some of my favorites I want to go into for each section. The first thing I want to go into is the Pathfinder Recruiter. Now, I really liked this idea because the society is always something that I consider my characters joining when I make a backstory as a player. And the idea of a character being a recruiter into arguably the most famous organization on Golarion provides players a great way to start out already invested into growing the society's roster of agents. Now, this one's really cool. Lets you choose 2 ability boosts. One has to be Wisdom or Charisma, and the other is a free ability boost. You are trained in the Diplomacy skill and a lore skill related to one city you've already visited often. Additionally, it lets you get the Group Impression skill feat, which I really like because it lets you kind of do diplomacy checks on a crowd, or at least a few multiple targets instead of just one, which I feel like is a really important thing if you're a Pathfinder going to a new city or maybe a tomb, trying to convince the locals to either join up or let you go around exploring. It just makes a lot of sense to me that the kind of recruiter would have this skill. I can definitely picture my character like on the street corner of Absalom or any such big city, kind of calling out to different people for adventure and recruiting them into the organization. My other favorite of these new backgrounds was the Trailblazer background. Talks about how uncharted realms have always intrigued you and how you've explored and mapped territories in service to merchants, governments, and even just your own curiosity. This background really, for me, kind of hits on that explorer vibe that I think a lot of Pathfinders have. It might not be all the Pathfinders' goals, but that kind of seeking of the unknown, at least to me when I visualize it, has a lot to do with travel and going all over Golarion. And I think the Trailblazer background really lets you get into that. Now, one thing that I'm going to keep coming back to in this book, and it starts right here in chapter 1, is the awesome side notes they put in the margins of each chapter. First off, there is a timeline of the history of the whole society. It makes it really nice to fit into like a homebrew world or to understand what exactly might be happening during your campaigns and what the society has been up to. Gives lots of cool different facts, like how over the 400 years of its existence, the society has put out 39 volumes of the Pathfinder Chronicles. Now, those of you wondering what that is, the Chronicles kind of detail the adventures that agents and venture captains go on that are then published to the public. The very first volume is actually featuring exploits of Dervin Guest, who is one of my favorite Pathfinders, as he went to the lost continent of Aslant in the Arcadian Ocean and helped discover a bunch of Aslanti technology, which gave the Pathfinders new magic items like their unique Wayfinders, which is kind of their badge of office. Seeing that connection was really cool. At the moment, I'm running a Ruins of Aslant campaign on Tuesdays, and seeing Dervin Guest pop up in the campaign and then again in this book really, for me, kind of drew me into this chapter. Now, when I say there's cool stuff in the margins, here's another great example. There is slang, in-canon slang for your Pathfinders. There's a whole list of stuff that your agents or venture captain, whatever your character is, might be saying. Two of my favorites, though, were the idea of a Scribble Silver, who is a desperate con artist who sells fake treasure maps. That slang, not only is it cool, I could easily picture making an NPC along those lines. That's so cool. The next, I feel like, is the murder hobo idea, but said nicer by Pathfinder agents. The first is, of course, the new phrase is Axe Envoy, which is basically representative of an unpredictable or short-sighted venturer who turns to violence before trying to understand or de-escalate. If that ain't calling out murder hobo players, I don't know what is, but I am here for it. Another great thing in this overview chapter in Chapter 1 was the idea of the training section. When making Pathfinders, there's lore all over the books from the first edition and, books in second edition, including, if you guys haven't read it already, the Lost Omens World Guide I had read here is definitely something I kept referencing while looking at this new book. But the training section here lets you kind of understand the process of becoming a Pathfinder a little better. It lets you understand the different types of things they train, like magic, martial, knowledges, and it kind of describes what exactly they should be. And I'm going to read this little passage because this really stood out for me. I really like this. By the end of the training, an ideal candidate can survive in the wild, perform moderate feats of athleticism, read and write in at least 3 languages with proficiency, communicate through Napsu sign, which for those of you who don't know, that is kind of the unique symbol of sign language, sign language that the Pathfinders made as a list of hand signals. Makes it easy to work in the field and signal their allies or talk in a potentially dangerous situation without being overheard. It says they should also be able to identify common threats, regale listeners with the society's history. I think that's a really important one. Act with decorum and charm in social affairs, research complex subjects within the library, display an understanding of Galarian's overarching history, exhibit specialized knowledge of several historical eras or regions, and demonstrate skill with at least 3 weapons. Now, I really, really like this idea of listing all the things someone should do, as well as them going on to get their confirmation, which, not like a church confirmation, but it is your confirmation into the Pathfinder Society. It reminds me of, I don't know if any of you have played this before, but there was an old module in 1E that my friends and I really liked and often incorporated into some homebrew games as well, called the Gauntlet, which is kind of a little dungeon that Pathfinders would run in advance of becoming an agent. Very dope. I really like that they have included all these tasks, and it's not just a dungeon crawl. These are like lessons that you should be learning on how to be a Pathfinder. So with that, that kind of brings us out of Chapter 1. The next chapter, Chapter 2, is all about factions within the Pathfinder Society. Now, the Pathfinder Society as a whole has a creed. That is to explore, to report, and cooperate. But that is not to say that there are not many moving parts and factions within the society itself. They might have different goals. Some might be explorers. Some might be looking for treasure. Some might be there for just the thrill of adventure. But this chapter helps you pick what faction or, part of the society works best for you and your characters. There's a lot of really cool ones like the Radiant Oath and the Verdant Wheel. They each have their own badge and logo design. And while we're on the topic of those logo designs, that's another great example of just the cool art in this book. Now, I don't want to spoil all the art because I really think you all should see it for yourself, but I am going to show you my next art piece over here on our presentation of Ezrin, the Iconic Wizard. Now, the Iconic Wizard, he is one of my favorite characters that has been introduced in the lore. And I love this idea of him just holding a wayfinder, the magical compass that is their badge of office. And I'm not going to spoil what he's doing in the rest of the picture. I think you guys could check that out for yourself. But I love how the character there has progressed, even just shown in this art from where he started. For instance, I used to listen to the Pathfinder Tale kind of audiobooks. And in the Rise of the Rune Lord one, starts out with Ezran wanting to make his mark and publish something in society. Here we have him diving deep into dungeons, holding the badge of office, doing what he does as a Pathfinder. I think that's kind of what a lot of people's characters want. And seeing this art lets you know that that's the vibe that this book is giving you. All right, moving on from our awesome art, back to the factions. There are a few that I'll go into because I can't go into all of them, as that would take us forever. But the first one I like is the Envoy Alliance. This is kind of a splinter group who wanted to hold the leaders accountable. That's pretty much their motto. And they're extremely interesting. During training, they have to focus on helping the team achieve their goal, while other factions kind of focus on personal greatness or learning how to contain threats. Those in the Envoys Alliance strive to ensure that every Pathfinder makes it home from the mission, no matter what. This cooperative stance, and a lot of this I'm reading from the book, it makes for a very interesting party. I really like the idea of a whole party that are members of the Envoy Alliance working together, as opposed to just that individual party member who might be like, oh, I'm here for the society, I'm here to learn, or I'm here to seek out archaeological finds. This is kind of like a ready-made way for Pathfinders to be bound and have really good reason for working together and having party cohesion. But not just do we learn about kind of what exactly is each faction. We get to learn about gear related to each faction. We get to learn about where they are based, what missions they go on. We get to learn about their specific leaders. In this case, it is Fola Barun. She's got this really, really cool, kind of floral dress vibe. And not only that, the gear that they have listed with them is really cool as well. One of their items is the body recovery kit, which really brings home that no man left behind. I feel like normally when new books, I like to hone in on those magic items, but stuff like this, just regular gear, really brings home that vibe of a complete story and shows how much thought they put into this. There were some other cool factions that I really liked. The Grand Archive was really cool. The Horizon Hunters, the Vigilant Seal. These are ones that have all sorts of tasks like keeping stock of all the knowledge the society has accrued or seeking out new places. It's all very, very cool. Not only that, we got to go back to the margins again. I'd said we keep going back there, but there is so much cool stuff to find. In this chapter, we see Pathfinder sea shanties. These are from the crew of the Pixie, which is kind of a mobile Pathfinder base. But they literally wrote in shanties. How cool is that? So I'm not a good singer, but I'll kind of read you some of the lines here of one of their shanties. There's only a small part of it. To look for treasure true, but those who sailed out vanished. So now we're sending you. Hey-o, the whirlpool spins. Raise a glass to all your sins. Hey-o, the whirlpool spins. Lost heroes cannot die. And if that's not the kind of flavor you're looking for with the character, having built-in canonical shanties and cool items like that, then maybe we're playing a very different game. But that stood out to me, along with all the other cool stuff in the margin. So, another cool category to get into here are some of the archetypes that really help support Pathfinder characters. First off, let's talk about the Pathfinder Agent. This was actually an archetype that kind of first showed up in, again, I keep showing it, but the Lost Omens World Guide. So feel free to check that out. It's really cool. I really like the continued support of previous works that Pathfinder and Paizo have released. So we already had the Pathfinder Agent in the Lost Omens World Guide. Here we see it again now with new feats and support being given for that previous content that really fleshes it out. So here's two favorite feats they added for that one. First one, Archaeologist Warning. I'll give you a brief run through that. Basically, you get to, when you make a perception, society, or thievery check during initiative, you as a Pathfinder can audibly or visually warn your companions and give them a +1 on initiative. I really like the idea of this feat. It's a free action, and I can picture a Pathfinder kind of joining up either, in tandem with other agents or as part of an adventuring party. And it's easy to see Pathfinders in the role of these, know-it-all guys. They know what's going on in Galarian. So the idea that you have this, mechanical benefit to that's like, oh, they saw something, they know what's up, they have the knowledge, so they can warn the party who might not know. Next up, another Pathfinder agent feat, we have Remember Your Training. This takes one action. You can use this once per day, and it fixes a problem that I always seem to have when I make martial characters. And that is, let's say you're making a fighter who's specialized in fighting giants. We have a fighter in one of my Rise of the Runelords games, Agnar Giantsbane. He is great at fighting giants. Nonetheless, he is not very good at knowledge skills. That's 1E, but still, I always think that when I make these very martial characters, I think of them as being able to fight something or wanting to fight something specific, aberrations, demons, what have you. But it seems weird when you make a knowledge check and they don't know about what it is you are fighting. So here, the way this feat works, Remember Your Training, is you can attempt a check to recall knowledge about a creature you can see, adding your level as a proficiency bonus if you're untrained, rather than just 0. If you roll a failure, not a critical failure, mind you, but just a failure, you can treat this as a success instead. Definitely kind of feeds into the vibe of Pathfinders being these jacks of all trades, and gives you a tangible way to reflect a character's knowledge that might not mechanically have been there before. So next is a rather long book, so I have a lot of notes that I thought I'd touch on here. But we have 2 more archetypes that I'm going to kind of touch on. The Scroll Master is next. This is, again, farther support for a previously made option that was featured in the character guide. Wouldn't be a Pathfinder-focused book, Pathfinder Society book, if there wasn't a focus on chronicling. So, I had to start cutting stuff down here as I feared I was going to write too much things when I was writing about this person. But let's go into some of the new feats they added for the Chroniclers here. The Scroll Masters. First off, Transcribe Moment. Gives you the ability to use the Transcribe Moment focus spell, and if you don't already have a focus pool, you get 1 focus point. You can refocus by spending 10 minutes to study a text or record notes of recent experience. Now, that's a little vague. Let's get into what that spell it gives you actually does. Essentially, you get to create a small permanent scroll that contains like a magical impression of your surroundings when you made the scroll. So there are so many possibilities for this. For one, when you're chronicling things as a Pathfinder, how cool is it that you can just pull the scroll and be like, oh, look, this is what we experienced in the dungeon. Check out this scene. You can hear it. You can smell the air, what have you. Also a great spell for GMs and players in general. That's a great way to find a clue if you're setting up a game where you want to have information presented to the players. This is a great way to do it. I don't know about other GMs, but that spell alone, I've definitely homebrewed multiple magic items that kind of do similar things in my homebrew games, and even during when I add stuff in to official adventure paths or modules. So having a concrete way to do it, really cool. I really like that they added that. All right. Last but not least on these archetypes, let's talk about the Spell Master. It added some cool lore for the Pathfinders. I like that all the agents, it says, are trained by the Master of Spells in basic arcane knowledge, even if only kind of full caster agents can become Spell Masters. It just makes sense that, it's something they should all study. There's, it's a world of magic and, myth. There stands to reason that even melee heavy or non-arcane casters should know what to do. Now, this is another feat that I just think it's really cute. I like it. This is the Familiar Form feat. Now, you can use your magic to transform into a small creature of a type that commonly serves as a spellcaster's familiar, potentially allowing you to safely scout for your party while retaining a degree of spellcasting ability. You gain the familiar form focus spell and increase the number of focus points in your pool by 1. I love the idea of this because I have had so many casters or other people with familiars in my games use their familiar and stuff to head out and scout. Now, there's always problems with that. What if they get spotted, lose a familiar? The familiar can't cast spells on its own. That's solved by this. Not to mention, absolutely adorable that your solution would be to turn yourself into a familiar to go scouting. Total mood. Now, moving on for our art. I'm gonna actually double ahead to a little creature they added in the margin around this chapter. I don't know what this little ferret thing is with a little antenna. If you know, please put it in the chat or message me later. But it's adorable, and I want my wizard to use the spell I just described to turn into this and go scouting. I have never wanted anything more in a Pathfinder game, quite frankly. All right, let's go back to our boy Ezra. We'll see what that cool tower was here in a sec. All right. So, next off, we are going to touch on the Decemvirate. Now, for those of you who do not know about the Decemvirate, this is the kind of mysterious body of people in charge of the Pathfinder Society. The Decemvirate is a body of 10 high-ranking Pathfinders working in tandem, hopefully for the betterment of the society, but potentially not always. They are masterminds and leaders, and once again, I gotta double back to the stuff in the margin, adding so much cool flavor. I always knew from various games and just lore and even the novels that I've read that the Decemvirate all have masks. I guess in my mind, I'd picture them as kind of a uniform, Jedi Sentinel gray mask where they all matched each other, so they wouldn't be harder to recognize. In fact, they each have their own unique masks, and honestly, this section of the Decemvirate, I would have just bought as like a little splat book or supplemental campaign setting book without the whole hardback. This thing was awesome. It really is a way to see that they're not just mysterious, and it goes into detail and depth about them, which I like, revealing that they're not necessarily the good guys of the Lost Omens story. They are there, but they have depth. They have levels of intrigue that are incredibly realistic, and I feel like if this society existed in real life, we would easily be able to see this type of nuance present there. And I really think that part of the book really just lent a whole new level of realism within the society's lore. Finally, at the end of Chapter 2, we have a whole rundown of other important NPCs, leaders of various factions, and again, just excellent art for all these NPCs, making it really, really easy to slip them into either a homebrew game, adding them into a pre-made AP. Just awesome availability from them. So let's move on to our Chapter 3. This is our second to last chapter. Appreciate everyone who's sticking through all the review right here. This is about the Society Lodges. Now, Pathfinders, they have bases called lodges scattered throughout Galarian. An excellent chapter here. It's perfect for character building. Listing each lodge, players have a chance to see key NPCs at the lodge, allies they might locally have in that town, city, country, what have you, enemies, assets, various services, and other miscellaneous things that will be present in your chosen lodge. Now, the lodges are scattered, like I said, throughout the world, and could be used all over for different adventure paths, different modules, 1E or 2E. They could be used for homebrew campaigns, or even just basing a cool base for your players. It's a really good way to describe like a castle or, a ship that they might be living on. But, as always, we can't talk about all of them, so let's dive into what we can see. First off, just going to mention it, if you're worried, don't worry, the Grand Lodge at Absalom, the city in the center of the world. And the map behind me, it's literally right over here, right in the center. That is their home base for the Pathfinders, and there's a lot of lore about that in here. But let's focus on some ones people might not be as familiar with. My personal favorite in this book is Farseer Tower, based in the city of Katapesh. Now, I've been obsessed with Katapesh for years. When I bought the Dark Markets Guide to Katapesh, a book from first edition, I fell in love with that city and was always looking for new things they might be adding to it. And this Pathfinder Lodge, I absolutely love. It is so cool they have in the city. Here's a brief passage that I think not only highlights this one, objectively my favorite, I know, but gives you a vibe of the various types of descriptions you can expect from the other lodges. So this is about Farseer Tower. Reaching 12 stories into the Katapeshi skyline, Farseer Tower looks like a twisting minaret thrusting up from the chaos of Katapesh's bustling markets and cramped alleyways. At night, magical magenta lights swirl around and illuminate the tower and its courtyard, reflecting off the white marble to bathe the nearby streets and alleyways in an eerie glow. As dawn breaks over the city, the magical enchantments ebb in response, and soon the unrelenting rays of the desert sun shine alone in the sky, until night falls once more. Really cool description. I love that. But like I said, that's not all you can expect when you read about the different bases, the different lodges. In this one, you find about NPCs. Take Willis Yule. She is, quote, the seer of Farseer Tower and a venture captain of this kind of sect of Pathfinders. The descriptions provided here make me want to play Yule as an NPC, and all the other NPCs I've read made me want to build characters based on them. They're excellent descriptions, excellent art, and heck, they even took time to add unique magic items to some of these characters, such as Yule. She's got this kind of cool nose chain that links from her earring to her septum piercing, and literally helps her with divining magic. Unique to her, excellent flavor. Now, one more that I'm going to touch on, and we're going to start going to chapter 4 and wrapping up this review. But the Grinning Pixie. We mentioned the boat earlier. This is where the sea shanty came from. This deserves note as a mobile lodge. Sails around the seas of Galarian. And I never even thought to make mobile lodges a thing. I'm sure they've existed before now. But reading through this idea, I was thrilled. The cool adventures you could have as a group of Pathfinders in a mobile lodge. Oh yeah, we heard about some things up in the lands of the Linorm Kings. Or maybe we heard about some stuff down on near Garund or the Mwangi Expanse. Let's sail over there and do our Pathfinder duties. Awesome concept. Grinning Pixie, definitely one of my favorite lodges I saw in there, even sans the sea shanties. All right, so final chapter. This is chapter 4. This is Pathfinder Society Options. Now, you might be wondering what that means. A little vague, so let's get into it. This is kind of a catch-all chapter for a lot of different things you might still have questions about that weren't answered in the previous ones. I like this as a wrap-up chapter. Certainly answered a few questions. I was making note on a few questions as I went, and this really answered all of them. So let's try to pick out a few things from each section within the chapter. First off, Pathfinder gear. I said it earlier and I'll say it again. It's not always about magic items when you're looking for flavor and cool character concepts. Regular adventuring gear is a great way to go. So this jumps you right off in the book, listing some cool adventuring gear, bits and bobs like grappling arrows, buoyancy vests, a way to make a wax key blank so you could copy keys as a Pathfinder, sneak in somewhere for some intrigue-based shenanigans. It really gives you a whole host of options for gear that is cheap, but with high roleplay potential. Next, it goes into talk about services, and of course the Society offers services to clients and its members. There's so many of them, and they're so skilled. They list a few options. There's fixers. They can help you in whatever area you need and help you navigate. Like going back to Katapesh, if a fixer lived there, they can help you navigate the back alleys and the bazaars, or a fixer in Absalom might lead you through the incredibly complex halls of the Grand Lodge. Now, then there's researchers, and I mean, if I lived in this world, I would be hiring a card-carrying member of the Pathfinder Society to be my researcher. They know their stuff. They know all the knowledges. And, of course, instructors. what makes a hero? A teacher. A teacher's what makes a hero. I'm a little biased because I am a teacher, but for reals, teachers are important. And the idea that they list so many cool teachers gives you kind of a Chiron and Greek mythology vibe. You know, these older, wiser Pathfinders teaching their skills to the next generation. And it lists all kinds of named instructors. Instructors teach you everything, your PCs, everything from like martial arts to the proper use of scrolls. Last but not least, we have our section on secrets of the Pathfinder Society. This is everything from magic items to unique spells, things that belong to the organization and help make it special. Something that's always a classic, of course, is their Wayfinders. We mentioned them earlier. Those are based on that ancient Aslanti technology the Pathfinders brought back from the shattered continent of Aslan and the Arcadian Ocean. They're kind of a magical compass that in the lore helps Pathfinders find their way to secret lodges or Pathfinder caches. They can illuminate the dark with a light spell. And not only that, they have the ability to further enhance ion stones, which kind of circle around your head normally. When placed in a Wayfinder, they can be enhanced and give additional magical benefits. So this is something that all card-carrying members of the society have and really kind of need to give them a leg up in this world. So I'm going to touch on a few cool new Wayfinders they've added, or at least, promoted in this book. One that I really, really liked here, I'm going to show you pictures. They did some more really cool art with it, is the Hummingbird Wayfinder. It says the Hummingbird Wayfinders blend Arcadian secrets into the original Wayfinder design, allowing the Wayfinder to gain mobility for a time and act as a spy. In addition to the normal effects of Wayfinder, a Hummingbird Wayfinder has the following activation. Once per hour, you can use it to transform the Wayfinder into a tiny bee hummingbird, about 2 inches long. And other than the Wayfinder being a visible bird, this has the effects of a prying eye spell. In addition to seeking through the hummingbird, you can activate any ion stone within the Wayfinder as if the Wayfinder were still on your person. When the effect ends, it transforms back to normal in its current position. Damaging the bird ends the effect, but does not destroy the Wayfinder. This is along the same vein as using Familiars to scout, but I love the idea that they are continually, over the years, canonically improving their technology with these Wayfinders, finding new ways to implement them, as well as just enhancing what they already have. Next up, they had a cute little section on animal helpers of the society. This is something that I really think you guys should read for yourselves. There's a lot of cool stat blocks, but I can tell you right off the bat, 2 things that stood out for me were Dwemer cat cubs, freaking adorable, and calligraphy worms, who are like these little tiny dragons who are obsessed with searching for new lore and writing. And I love the idea of one of them just kind of crawling around a Pathfinder's shoulder, helping them seek out new arcane secrets. And right after that, we have our glossary. Like I said, the glossary makes for really, really easy navigating of this book. I felt like whenever I wanted to go back and check something, I could do it lickety-split. This book is really well laid out, and it's time to wrap up this review. I'm just going to say that if you love the Pathfinder Society as an idea, as a group in the lore, then this book is really a must-have. Arguably, to me, the most iconic group to find itself in the world of the Lost Omens setting is the Pathfinder Society, and it is more than done justice by this book. This is an awesome entry. Wish I could have read it years ago. I think I would have made about 10 times as many Pathfinder characters. For me, I think this must-have for anyone who wants to have their character or stories be part or set in the society. And the nice thing about that is it doesn't just have to be game masters that are using this. Players, I think, would really benefit from this, get a lot of cool concepts, traits, archetypes, things like that they can really boost up their character with. With that, thanks again to the awesome people at Paizo for letting me review this really cool new product. Those of you still watching, if you aren't already, feel free to follow or subscribe to see more reviews in the future. In the coming days, I'm going to be reviewing a few more books namely the Devastation Arc Starfinder series, which, for those who don't know, is a high-level Starfinder adventure, which is something that I haven't had the chance really to play high-level Starfinder stuff, but starting off at around level 12 sounds super exciting. Then, of course, there's a AP that I waited a really long time for when I first heard it announced, and that is the Agents of Edgewatch. Being members of the City Guard in Absalom, the city at the center of the world, like the iconic Lost Omens city. And I'm really eager to dive into that and do a review of those two APs. Thanks again to Paizo, and thank you all for watching. Catch you all later.